of Bahrain's unwavering commitment as a non-permanent member of the Security Council to cooperate with the international community in promoting international peace and security, and our commitment to strive diligently toward a just solution to the Palestinian question, given its critical importance to achieving regional stability and lasting peace in the Middle East. Under the leadership of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, King of the Kingdom of Bahrain, and under the guidance of His Royal Highness Prince Salman bin Hamad Al Khalifa, Crown Minister and Prime Minister, we reaffirm our steadfast support for the legitimate rights of the brotherly Palestinian people, particularly their right to self-determination and to establish their independent sovereign state on the borders of June 4, 1967, with East Jerusalem as its capital, in accordance with the Arab Peace Initiative and relevant international resolutions. In response to recent developments in the occupied Palestinian territory, the Kingdom of Bahrain underlines the importance of implementing Security Council Resolution 2803 as a binding framework for ending the conflict in the Gaza Strip, consolidating the ceasefire and the establishment of the Board of Peace. His Majesty the King's participation in the inaugural meeting of the Board of Peace that was held in Washington and chaired by His Excellency President Donald Trump. This participation conveyed several humanitarian and diplomatic messages. Among the most notable was the Kingdom of Bahrain's contribution as a member of the Security Council to facilitating the implementation of the comprehensive peace plan and its commitment to dialogue, diplomacy, and the peaceful resolution of conflicts, as well as the promotion of tolerance and peaceful coexistence. This has been reflected in His Majesty's initiatives during his chairmanship of the 33rd session of the Arab Summit, which supported peace and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state, in addition to providing assistance in health and education to those affected by conflicts, and demonstrated the Kingdom's pride in its historic and strategic partnerships with regional and international partners. Achieving stability and peaceful coexistence in the Middle East requires respect for the existing legal and historical status of the city of Jerusalem, the preservation of religious holy sites, and the support for the role of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in safeguarding Islamic and Christian holy sites, as well as the support for the role of Al-Quds Committee chaired by His Majesty the King of the Kingdom of Morocco. Further, it requires categorical rejection of any attempts at forced displacement or altering demographic composition, the halting of illegal settlement expansion in the West Bank, and the prevention of any illegal measures or provocative practices that would undermine the prospects for peace or fuel hatred and extremism. In this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain believes that achieving sustainable regional peace requires a comprehensive approach to address the sources of tension, escalation, and conflict in the region. This should include resolving the Iranian crisis through serious and constructive dialogue that ensures Iran's compliance with the principles of good neighborliness and international law, respect for the sovereignty of states, and non-interference in their internal affairs, ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz and other vital waterways, for Iran to halt its nuclear, missile, and drone programs, to refrain from arming or financing proxies and armed militias, and rejecting unjustified attacks that violate the sovereignty of the Gulf Cooperation Council states and that of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, in accordance with the Security Council Resolution 2817, leading to a comprehensive, peaceful settlement that enhances security, stability, and prosperity for all the peoples of the region. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain reaffirms at this critical time the urgent need for the international community to shift from crisis management to finding solutions, giving priority to wisdom, dialogue, and diplomacy to achieve a just and comprehensive peace, to promote coexistence and tolerance, and build a future that is more secure, stable, hopeful, and prosperous for all. Thank you.
I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Andraj Vilomy-Sons, State Secretary of the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Latvia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Khaled Khiari, for his informative briefing. I welcome Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway and representative of the Ad hoc Liaison Committee, Mr. Espen Barth Eide, and thank him for outlining the international community's continued efforts in Gaza and the West Bank. I also welcome the member of the Executive Board of the Board of Peace, Mr. Tony Blair, to this meeting. I thank him for his valuable contribution. Mr. President, over the past 2 months, the Middle East has fallen into a new wave of violence and reignited threats to international peace and security. Iran's decision to take global navigation and shipping hostage by closing the Strait of Hormuz created a grave and immediate global economic and energy crisis. The consequences of Iran's unprovoked attacks against Arab countries in the region, aided by Russia, are felt worldwide. Iran's belligerent actions are totally unacceptable and must stop, as set out in Resolution 2817. The recent extension of the ceasefire provides a glimmer of hope that diplomatic efforts will provide lasting solution to the Iranian nuclear issue and the regime's destabilizing activities across the Middle East. We appreciate the mediation efforts of Pakistan and other countries in this regard. Hezbollah has chosen the interests of the IRGC above the interests of the Lebanese people. It has dragged the civilian population into this conflict, who now bear the severe brunt of this escalation. Lebanon is experiencing massive humanitarian crisis. The Lebanese government has made steps towards re-establishing state control throughout the whole territory. Continued and increased international support is necessary to this regard. We welcome the government's decision to ban Hezbollah's military and security activities and encourage further efforts to strengthen the capabilities of the Lebanese army and international security forces in view of implementing Resolution 1701. We reiterate our firm commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon. Latvia welcomes the cessation of hostilities and historic direct talks between Israel and Lebanon, mediated by the United States. We recall that UNIFIL implements the mandate authorized by this Council, and the mission must not be targeted by either side. Latvia condemns in the strongest terms the attacks that have led to the deaths of UNIFIL peacekeepers of Indonesia and France, and have left several peacekeepers severely injured. International humanitarian law is non-negotiable and must be respected in all circumstances. Civilians, medical facilities, and civilian objects such as homes and villages must be protected. Exercising the right of self-defense must not lead to the occupation of the sovereign territory of another country. Mr. President, at a time when international attention is focused on resolving the conflict in the wider Middle East and Lebanon, we must not lose sight of Gaza and West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Despite international community's consistent call to stop the unlawful settlement expansion in the West Bank, the establishment of 34 new settlements was recently approved by Israeli authorities. The spiraling violence is creating immense suffering and increasing security risks for both Palestinians and Israelis. We call on Israeli authorities to take immediate and effective action to prevent further settler attacks and ensure accountability. We condemn policies and threats of forcible displacement and annexation in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and urge Israel to abide by its obligations under international law. In alignment with the EU joint statement, we recall that the approval of the death penalty bill by the Israeli parliament marks a grave regression from Israel's own commitments. We are deeply concerned about the de facto discriminatory character of the bill. We await the judgment of the Supreme Court of Israel and call on the government not to implement this law in line with Israel's previous commitments. In Gaza, a fragile ceasefire halts, awaiting the next steps in implementing the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict, put forward by President Trump and endorsed by this Council, Resolution 2803. Tangible restoration of living conditions, including unimpeded access to humanitarian assistance at scale, is urgently needed. Hamas and other non-state armed groups must disarm and relinquish power. We strongly condemn Hamas for rejecting the disarmament plan prepared by Nikolai Mladenov. We look forward to the deployment of the International Stabilization Force and internationally trained Palestinian civil police, as well as the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Gaza. Along with the urgent need for early recovery and reconstruction, it is necessary to create a social and political environment conducive to a reunited Palestinian government. We congratulate the Palestinian Authority for organizing the municipal elections on 25th April, notwithstanding the multiple challenges. We must continue support for the Palestinian Authority's reform agenda and maintain a political perspective that addresses the security concerns and legitimate aspirations of both Israelis and Palestinians. We reiterate that negotiated two-state solution in accordance with internationally agreed parameters as defined by Security Council resolutions and the New York Declaration remain the only viable path to a lasting peace. Latvia is committed to work with the Council members to this objective. Thank you.
I thank His Excellency Mr. Willem Sons for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank Deputy Special Coordinator Alakbarov and Foreign Minister Aide for their briefings. We are especially happy to have Mr. Tony Blair here in his capacity as Executive Board Member for the Board of Peace, and I thank you, Mr. Blair, for your clarity, for shedding some light on a realistic plan forward. Is frankly quite the contrast from some of the tired talking points we hear in this committee month after month. So thank you for your leadership and clarity, and very pleased to hear the strong collaboration with the Ad Hoc Liaison Committee and the Board of Peace and other mechanisms that were established by Resolution 2803 as we all seek to move forward. Colleagues, I want to be clear that every day matters right now. Every day we either move closer to a future where Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank live in freedom and prosperity at peace with Israel, or we drift back towards chaos, rockets, hostages, and rubble. The American people, President Trump, and our partners on the Board of Peace are working every day towards that brighter vision, towards that future. We saw, I just want to share with you a story or a glimpse of that future we saw just last week. Our good friends in the United Arab Emirates helped organize a mass wedding for 300 brides and grooms in Gaza. 20,000 people, families, community leaders, young Palestinians, all celebrated in Deir al-Balah. For just a moment, we witnessed laughter and joy and relative calm. This was no small feat in Gaza. And candidly, without the ceasefire enabled by President Trump, without the Board of Peace, without our regional partners stepping up, it would have been unimaginable. It was unimaginable just months ago when the entire region was at war. Those are the normal moments. That's the better life. We want to see more of that in Gaza. But there's one obstacle: Hamas. Hamas must accept that they will not have any role in Gaza, directly or indirectly, through weapons and terrorism and violent intimidation. I think we're all unified in that vision. That also means that Hamas and other terrorist and militant groups must demilitarize. They must irreversibly surrender their path of terror, their offensive infrastructure that they've wasted billions and billions of dollars in supplies on. They must move away from the tunnels and weapons production facilities, not try to hide them. We heard a very realistic and comprehensive plan from High Commissioner Mladenoff, who briefed this council, as we promised during the negotiations for 2803, to keep the council informed. We heard a reasonable plan for demilitarization. The U.S. and our partners on the Board of Peace, in consultation with the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, the NCAG, will continue to press Hamas. We will not ease up. We will not look away. And for those here who state in speech after speech they're committed to the two-state solution, we have to ask ourselves, will Hamas seek a path of peace and politics, or will Hamas seek a path of terrorism and war? The time is now. Those negotiations are happening right now, today, and in the coming week. So for those with those relationships, now's the time to use them, because that's the obstacle to what we talk about here month after month after month. So if we're serious about actually unlocking that path to peace and not having these meetings and passing them on to the next generation, this week is the moment. And I encourage all of you to press Hamas to the path of peace. That's it. It's really that simple. We, from our perspective in the United States, will continue to support the International Stabilization Force as it seeks to enable the NCAG to create the conditions for governance and stability in Gaza. I want to particularly thank Kazakhstan, Albania, Kosovo, Morocco, Indonesia, and others who are committed to stability, who are actually putting troops and treasure forward, more than words, for stability in Gaza moving forward. It's their work that will allow the IDF to withdraw from Gaza based on real standards, on milestones, on time frames, independent international monitors, all of that laid out in the plan, all governing demilitarization. But again, Gaza will not be safe, free, or prosperous if weapons are shifted from Hamas to one of its look-alike groups, or if weapons are simply shuffled around from one corner of Gaza to another for radicals to pick up later for yet another cycle of violence. Their weapons of terror must be permanently placed beyond reach. A decommissioning process supported by an internationally funded buyback and reintegration program is on the table. One party stands in the way. So we can continue to have these discussions, or we can use every element of diplomatic, economic, and other mechanisms that we have in our toolkit to press Hamas to accept what is a reasonable deal that they signed up for. If we do not get Hamas to disarm, and that means all of us must push them to disarm, and follow through on the comprehensive plan to end the Gaza conflict that they agreed to, we may never get this moment back, at least in the foreseeable future. And so we urge all UN member states to join us in supporting this progress in line with this Council's historic Resolution 2803, which endorsed the comprehensive plan, welcomed the establishment of the Board of Police, paved the way for the NCAG, and authorized the ISF. Colleagues, the task facing the NCAG in particular is immense. We welcome the liaison office with the Palestinian Authority. Since the ceasefire, we have delivered significant concrete improvements to humanitarian access and aid delivery in Gaza. We're pushing every day to make that process better through the Civil Military Coordination Center, and we are pushing every day to expand it. We know that life in Gaza remains difficult and uncertainty about the future is high. But I will state over and over again, we must be honest about what's holding Gaza back. It is Hamas. It is okay to all of my colleagues in the UN Secretariat and otherwise to say that out loud, to call that out for what it is. We have a plan for reconstruction and development in Gaza. There is financing, there are partners ready to build, there is a pathway to peace, there is ease security restrictions, there's a path to prosperity. The moment Hamas agrees to demilitarize, a new chapter in Gaza's history will be written. Colleagues, it's as simple as that. I thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United States for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Panama thanks the Bahraini Presidency for convening this quarterly open debate, and we're grateful for the detailed briefings which painted a clear picture of the particularly critical juncture in the Middle East, where tensions persist, are on the rise, and are constantly changing, giving rise to an increasingly fragile and volatile environment. In Gaza, despite international initiatives over the last few months that we've just heard of, at least 637,475 school-aged children remain without sustained access to in-person education. More than 18,500 patients remain critical, including 4,000 children in need of medical evacuation, and around 81% of structures are either destroyed or damaged. Panama calls for full, sustained, unimpeded humanitarian access, as well as urgent medical evacuations that are needed to save lives, and advanced in these international efforts to ease the suffering of the Gazan population. Meanwhile, in the West Bank, according to UN figures, in March this year alone, 21 Palestinians were killed, 306 wounded, and 521 people were displaced. This is added to the more than 39,000 people displaced in the most recent period, reflecting a constant deterioration in the situation on the ground. Panama reiterates the need to bring an end to the violence, to prevent forced displacement, and to avoid measures that continue to worsen the necessary conditions for a sustainable political solution. In Lebanon, since the 2nd of March this year, escalating violence has left more than 2,000 people dead and around 6,800 wounded, while we have seen attacks on health workers, which we believe are unacceptable. We further reiterate, as we have said with regard to all global conflicts, the importance of fully respecting the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of Lebanon, and of recognizing and supporting the efforts of its legitimate government, which has insisted on the need for a ceasefire reached through mediation by the United States, which has established channels of dialogue between Lebanon and Israel. We call for the current ceasefire to be extended and consolidated. Panama rejects the attacks on UN Blue Helmets in Lebanon, causing the death or serious injury of members of personnel who were doing essential work under the UNIFIL mandate. We express our most sincere condolences and solidarity with the affected troop-contributing countries, particularly with French, Indonesian, Ghanaian, and Polish contingents. We reiterate that Blue Helmets must never come under attack. Therefore, the missions, safety, and freedom of movement must be fully guaranteed, strictly in accordance with international law and Resolution 1701. President, the situation in Yemen remains alarming. with millions of people in need of humanitarian assistance, including 2.2 million children under 5 in need of treatment for acute malnutrition in one of the most serious crises in the world. Panama reiterates its deep concern and rejection at the action of the Houthis to block the delivery of humanitarian aid, as well as at the detentions of UN and humanitarian agency personnel, which violate international law and worsen the suffering of the population. Turning now to Syria, the political transition process continues. We underscore the importance of keeping the country outside the orbit of regional instability and the effects of conflict in its immediate environment. Syria must retain control over its own destiny, with full sovereignty across all of its territory, as it has managed to do up to date. Therefore, it is essential to ensure full respect for the 1974 Separation of Forces Agreement in the Golan, which is an essential part of regional stability. We call on all parties to refrain from action that might compromise the implementation of this agreement. Furthermore, the developing situation with regard to Iran is giving rise to ever greater concern. The dangerous escalation in the Strait of Hormuz, characterized by the back and forth of attacks and reprisals, has shown just how quickly tensions can spill outside of a single theater, heightening the risk of greater destabilization and directly affecting multiple states in the region with global economic consequences. We underscore the containment attitude demonstrated by countries in the Gulf, which, despite coming under attack, have opted to avoid greater escalation, preferring to seek out conditions to once again restore regional stability. We reiterate our solidarity and our support for countries of the Gulf and others that have come under attack, attacks that they did not provoke, and we insist on the urgent need to avoid a greater escalation and to preserve and expand the cessation of hostilities by all parties as the first and urgent step to build trust and establish negotiations that might contribute to the return of regional stability and maritime security. President, to conclude, Panama reaffirms its support for respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of all states in the region. These are fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter and a vital foundation for stability and peace. The experience in the region has repeatedly shown that there is no military solution to any ongoing conflict. Stability and peace are not imposed. They are built through dialogue, diplomacy, and good faith negotiation as the only viable paths that address root causes of conflict and give rise to real conditions for peaceful coexistence. The region needs decisions that bring an end to these hostilities, decisions that restore trust, decisions that enable the civilian population, including children, to once again live in dignity and security. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
I thank you, Mr. President. I thank also the Kingdom of Bahrain for convening this important and timely quarterly open debate. We also thank ASG Khayari for his insight and knowledge, and the presidents of also the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of Norway, Palestine, and Latvia in this meeting. We also thank Mr. Tony Blair for his remarks. We meet at a moment of acute and escalating instability in the Middle East. These consequences are not confined to the region. They are reverberating around the globe, shaking the very foundation of the peace and stability and security. Let me begin with occupied Palestinian territory, because some wounds are too deep to silence and some cries for justice cannot wait. Just days ago in northern Gaza, a pregnant woman carrying twins were killed by an Israeli regime artillery shell along with her 2 children, Hamza and Naya. The 2 children not in distant headline, but in a home that once held laughter, bedtime stories, and dreams for the future. We don't know if the twins she carried were boys or girls. We would never know their names, never see them grow up, never witness them enjoying the love and care of their family and community. How many more Hamzas and Nayas must we lose before world stops turning away? 2 more lives are now gone, where too many have already perished in some of the worst documented crimes against humanity in the 21st century. How many more pregnant mothers cradling life within them must be shattered by shelling before we take action and hold the occupying power accountable for the atrocities against the very meaning of humanity? Mr. President, in the West Bank, we are deeply alarmed by the surge in settlerist terrorism, which has reached unprecedented levels. We condemn the deliberate attacks on ambulances and systematic restrictions of medical supplies. These are not random acts, but a premeditated obstruction of the fundamental right to health and life, and further worsening any already dire humanitarian situation. The recent approval by the occupying Israeli force to establish a school in Sheikh Jarrah is a calculated move to alter the city's demographic and cultural character, reflecting a persistent disregard for international law and the Palestinian rights. The occupying Israeli regime's escalating campaign against UNRWA must stop. Israel must allow unfettered humanitarian access in the occupied Palestinian territory. Any restriction on aid, including food, water, and medical supplies, is a violation of international law. The future of Gaza and West Bank must be determined by Palestinians themselves. In that regard, we welcome the current efforts to hold local elections in the West Bank and in the municipality of Deir al-Balah in the Gaza Strip, as this represents a vital opportunity for Palestinians to exercise their democratic rights. The end of Israeli regime's long-standing occupation of Palestine and establishment of a sovereign independent state of Palestine with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital in accordance with relevant UN resolutions and Arab peace initiatives remains the only viable pathway to achieving a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace. Mr. President, turning to Lebanon, the Blue Line situation remains dangerously volatile due to repeated Israeli violations of Resolution 1701 and risk of miscalculations. Somalia condemns reported Israeli occupying force attacks in southern Lebanon, which have killed thousands of civilians, mostly women and children, as well as an attacks of UNIFIL that killed and injured Ghanaians, Indonesian, and French peacekeepers. Targeting peacekeepers is a war crime. Those responsible must be held accountable. We welcome the April 16 ceasefire and its extension facilitated by the US, enabling the first direct engagement in years, and urge full adherence to the ceasefire arrangements and respect for Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity. On Syria, Somalia remains concerned about Israel's destabilization actions in Syria. The occupied Syrian Golan Heights remain Syrian territory under Resolution 497, requiring full Israeli withdrawal and compliance. A Syrian-led political process under Resolution 2254 is essential for unity, sovereignty, and return of refugees. Mr. President, turning to the wider Middle East, a recent escalation represents one of the most dangerous developments in recent years. The expansion of the conflict into maritime air and territorial domains have brought the region to the brink of wider confrontations. In this context, Somalia welcomes the ceasefire arrangement between the United States and Iran, facilitated through Pakistan. We commend the brotherly nation of Pakistan for for its mediation role and all efforts aimed at de-escalation, and urge the parties to build this momentum toward a durable and comprehensive political misunderstanding. Mr. President, beyond the Middle East, Somalia condemns the so-called recognition of a separatist enclave in northwestern Somalia and rejects Israeli regime's recent appointment of the so-called ambassador, a move done as a cover for establishing Israeli military bases in Somalia. This is not only violates Somali sovereignty, but also threatens the Horn of Africa and the Red Sea stability, and is part of the broader forced relocation scheme targeted Palestinians. Somalia unequivocally rejects any demographic or territorial alteration under this pretext. Across all these crises, a clear pattern emerges: the erosion of international law, persistence of impunity, and absence of political will to resolve conflicts at their root, particularly the long-standing violation of Israeli occupying regime in the region and now in the Horn of Africa. Most vividly, Palestine, as estimated, 1.2 million children in Gaza are reported to be losing even that voice, silenced not by choice, but by trauma and injuries from attacks. They are suffering in silence, unable to speak at all. So I will end with this Arabic proverb, and I say this with urgency. عندما سكت أهل الحق عن الباطل توهم الباطل.
When you belong to remain silent in the face of falsehood, the people of falsehood became deluded.
Truth remains silent in the face of falsehood. The people of falsehood become deluded that they were on the side of the truth. End of quote. Mr. President, and members of the Security Council, not let silence become that lie. Speak and take action before another mother, another Hamza, another Naya is silent forever. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. I welcome Foreign Minister Al-Ayyan presiding over today's meeting. I thank PSG Chiari, Foreign Minister
and Tony Blair. The situation in the Middle East is escalating and widening, and it affects the security of energy. The President of China have proposed a solution. And for the sovereignty of the international law and the implementation of international law, and it's a proposal by China. The status quo is very critical from, but it's turning from war to peace. So China is calling for self-restraint. China is calling for self-restraint in order to cease fire. Mr. President, Palestine is going to be the top priority and high on the agenda of our solutions for the Middle East. For decades, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not moving. It's stuck, but the solution of two-state solution is the best idea. The clashes and collision that we see, Palestinians and Palestinian territories is deteriorating, and the citizens are facing death and injuries. The international community should interfere immediately to see a way out for Gaza is not a stage for war and killings. The international community ceasefire agreement is really welcomed, but it's a fragile ceasefire, but Israel kept attacking and more than 8,000 have been killed and in 2,000 have been injured. The humanitarian situation is deteriorating in Gaza and the Palestinian territories. Completely collapse in the medical infrastructure. So we call on the international community to for Israel, it should abide by its commitments, and we call on the humanitarian organizations to work. Second, the West Bank also, Israel, as we can see, is expanding settlement and building 34 settlements, and it rebuilt another settlements. The aggression is increasing and the arrests is also taking place in the West Bank, and also the death penalty, and Israel should abide by the UN resolutions or else we are going to enter a dilemma. Israel should respond. Israel should respond to the peace calls. Third, the two-state solution is a must. This is the only solution that we can do. Anyone who is rejecting this, so he's rejecting the solution. The two-state solution is the best thing. Any other solution is not going to solve the problem. Any other solution. We also welcome the municipality elections that took place last week. We have the establishment of the Palestinian state with the borders of 1967, and to put an end for the suffering of the Palestinian people and to reach to a settlement. Thank you.
I thank
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank Mohammed Khaled Khiyari and His Excellency Aide, the Foreign Minister